Ego is the enemy of progress. And I think that the CEOs who fail to scale have, they let their ego get in the way. They become too certain. Back to the thing I said at the beginning, the best CEOs I've ever seen are like curious children learning every day.
They say it's lonely at the top. They're right. But you don't have to scale your company alone. Welcome to the Scaling CEO. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. On this podcast, I sit down with top performing CEOs to uncover the hidden patterns and frameworks behind their success so you can avoid common pitfalls and accelerate your company's growth. Now, on to the show. My guest today is Tom Chavez. Tom is not your typical CEO because he is CEO of multiple companies. As the co-founder of Superset, he operates a startup studio that builds data-driven companies from the ground up. This approach comes from deep, first-hand experience. Before Superset, Tom built and sold Wrapped to Microsoft, and later built Crux, which he sold to Salesforce. The companies he's built have generated a staggering 17x return for investors. What I find fascinating is his background. A Harvard BA in computer science and philosophy, the only person in the world I know who has that combination. And, oh, by the way, a PhD from Stanford in engineering economic systems. So for over 20 years, his focus has been on using data, decision science, and AI to solve what he calls hard, interesting problems. Today, we're going to get into the mind of a founder operator who's scaled multiple companies and now does it for a living, creating them from scratch. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Glenn. It's good to be here.
So your model at Superset is to found companies and run them. You've been quoted saying you don't wait for the perfect entrepreneur to walk through the door. How does that all play out at Superset?
Yeah, I say that because when I reflect on my own journey, I was lucky to have been given some shots, and whether people admit it or not, we're all learning on the job, right? So sometimes entrepreneurs show up ideally scrappy, a little rough hewn, without all the hard edges sanded out, right? If you're going to take this journey, you have to have what we like to call demonic intensity in my shop, and a conviction and a willingness to go the distance. The other things are coachable, right? I'd like to observe that a lot of company building is learnable. And so what we think we need to do is create great soil conditions for entrepreneurs to come in, learn fast. We want to create playbooks and enabling infrastructure and mindsets, right, that help them uh, go the distance and build great companies.
Right. Now, your entire career is built on data and decision science. Yet many CEOs I coach love the idea of being data driven, find it hard to get there in reality. What is the single biggest blind spot CEOs have when it comes to using data to actually grow their companies?
Yeah, look, I came up, as you pointed out in the intro, as an engineer by training. So speaking of learning on the job, I didn't know what a balance sheet was. I had a vague notion of what a P&L was, but I was just all about the products and the engineering of the system using data. Uh, so those challenges have always really kind of glistened for me. I think the biggest trap I've seen others fall into when it comes to sort of pretending to be data driven is that you need to understand in a deep kind of visceral way that data isn't something to be processed. Data is the main event, right? If you came of age during Oracle days, for example, well, we had databases that processed data, and the business process, right, for supply chain or finance or whatever it was, that was the central concern. The transition that I was lucky to go through, and that I think we're continuing to live in this age where we realize, no, data is the fuel. Not just now, we all talk about data as the fuel for AI, but it's the fuel for insights and analytics and the optimization of any kind of process. So it sounds a little nuanced, but the point is, like, data is now the dog wagging the tail, right? Before,
Uh,
data was just along for the ride. So making that transition in your head and understanding that, capturing, organizing, orchestrating, wrangling, moving, activating data, that's God's work, right? That's the main thing that we do, particularly again in the age of AI.
that's fantastic. And was coaching a CEO, and we were talking about what are they going to do related to taking advantage of AI, and they were not, Tom, focused
Mm,
on the what's happening with the data. They didn't recognize the value they had in the data that they were using to run the company and interact with their
yeah.
customers and help their customers, and that's where they're now focused. It's almost like they listened to you, and began to understand that, wow, we have this massive set of assets in the data we have.
Well, it's funny, Glenn, because I do see a number of people who are standing on an embarrassment of riches with data that they could do, incredible things with, and they're not fully aware, or they become aware, as you're mentioning in the case of this particular CEO. I also see people making the opposite mistake where they think their data is more valuable or precious than it actually is. If I could
Mm,
add a postscript, in the age of AI, especially, right, with the emergence of these new LLMs, and I've been engineering these systems for a long time, this is awesome, right? This is really exciting because they give us the opportunity and the power to do so much more. But let's be real. We're all operating off that same model infrastructure. And yeah, we use Anthropic for this, and we tilt towards OpenAI for different kinds of problems. People are understanding how these different frontier models are better at certain tasks and with different kind of cost performance trade-offs. The point is, we don't know what's going on inside them, and we
mhm.
actually don't care. It's virtuosity with data, right, that feeds those models. That's, from my vantage point, the central basis of competition now. I like to say, leave to the frontier models the science of AI. We and others get to compete in the engineering of AI through data.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
You've had 2 massive exits, one to Microsoft, one to Salesforce. Looking back at the journey with Crux or Wrapped, what's the one scaling insight you have now that if you'd known it then would have saved you and your CEO peers a tremendous amount of pain, time, and money?
Yes, look, the challenge, when I started Wrapped, I was a freshly minted Stanford PhD, and I say that with my tongue in my cheek because I made all the mistakes that you'd expect a freshly minted Stanford PhD in the hot seat to make. But carrying that forward even into the build out of Crux, what I didn't adequately appreciate at the time was that the go to market of a company is its own systems engineering challenge. And it's
Mm.
at least as important as whatever systems engineering you do in the product. So, so the scaling opportunity, and I really understood this better, I think, at Crux. Let me say, I landed at Salesforce, and I think it's widely understood, Salesforce um, hasn't won in the market because of these astounding technical breakthroughs. It's because of the go-to-market virtuosity, right? That they use to conquer new segments and launch new product and sell more and more and more of it to customers. So the point here and the central scaling benefit is in what Salesforce calls enablement. Take seriously the enablement of your sales organization, but think of that as a systems engineering problem, right? Where you're you're putting the numbers to pipeline generation and pipeline throughput, and you're feeding the pipeline not just with more reps, but with more of the content and education and tooling they need. Every minute that you shave off a rep's day of just hunting and pecking in the dark, looking for the right next mm, asset or insight to bring to a customer conversation, that's lost time, that's lost money, right? And now back to AI, we have this opportunity to automate and accelerate so much of those sales processes for enablement, right? In a way that we couldn't before. So the product, yes, the technology, but the most important thing I feel I've learned is the urgency and the importance of scaling your go-to-market with tools for enablement, broadly conceived.
It's really interesting you bring that up, and I congratulate you for making that shift because I see this very often, especially with early stage companies where the founder has a technology focus. It could be a product focus or a technology focus, and they want to spend time there even as the company scales. Excuse me. The challenge is that they're not spending time holistically looking at the other areas of the company. And frankly, go to market is the one that doesn't get as much attention because they don't have as much experience there. They may not understand exactly how that's going to play out as the company scales. And so they go to where they're comfortable and not where the company is necessarily requiring their assistance. And that's a shift that you made, and I encourage my CEOs to make when it's important to make sure there's balance between those two.
Totally. Like you said, they stay where they're comfortable. The product is their macaroni and cheese. So we tell, we tell a lot of the founders we work with who are technically amazing, and we want that. It's a necessary condition. But then they go and start thinking, well, that's the sufficient condition. I've built a kick-ass product. Now it's just going to sell itself. Uh-uh. Right. This, the most important thing is stop hugging the product, get out of the office, go off and start talking to customers, put on your safari hat and wander through the jungle with your recorder on and just listen to customers and and then take seriously from there again this systems engineering problem of how do I scale the whole company and the go-to-market motion such that it's almost like what a conductor does with a symphony, right? The marketing organization with the right content is like the violins, bring them in at just the right moments. And then you're doing all of the analytics on your outbounding and acquisition at the top of the funnel, and you're tuning that process every single day. And then you're enabling the reps, all of that for me hangs under the banner of what I'm calling enablement for go to
Right.
market.
What a great analogy. I'm gonna use that one. So you talk about a systems methodology for scaling the company. I want to shift our mindset a little bit around the individual, the CEO. So what is the fundamental difference you see in a leader who can personally scale with their company versus the one who gets stuck? Is it a skill or a mindset or something else entirely?
Look, if I had to compress it into a single word, Glenn, I would say ego. Ego is the enemy of progress. And I think that the CEOs who fail to scale have, they let their ego get in the way. They become too certain. Back to the thing I said at the beginning, the best CEOs I've ever seen are like curious children learning every day. The ones who scare me the most, and like you got to have conviction and you have to have a strong opinion based on data and facts and logic, but never be too sure, right? The
Mm,
ones, I like to talk about the certainty to knowledge ratio. I see so many CEOs with a ratio there that's hopelessly out of control. And especially in the days we live in now, like everything's changing so fast. All the stuff I thought I knew that, was useful, some of it's useful. The patterns are useful, but the lexicon, the artifacts, all the tooling, everything's different, right? So what got you here is not going to get you there. You gotta be super humble and just go to the shed every day, do your 100 push-ups and learn, and never be too certain and too egotistical of, that you've got it.
that is great advice. Great advice. When I was a CEO, I had a coach for 17 years.
Mhm.
And that was because each time I met with my coach, I just learned a little something that became compound interest. I was I wanted to become better. I wanted to continually improve, and it was life-changing for me, and that's how I got into the business I'm in here, right now, coaching CEOs, and they have to have this mentality of, "How can I just learn? How can I assume that I don't know everything I need to know and just become a little bit better every month?" And it's a fantastic way to grow. So, the last topic here is one you know a lot about. It's artificial intelligence, and I'm hoping you can talk a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit out of your core element to CEOs who are not AI first companies, to
Mhm.
CEOs that are running, let's just call it a normal company. It could be a manufacturing company, distribution, it could be professional services, it could be a software company. But how should the CEO be thinking about AI internally for operations, for uh, incorporating AI into their products? I encourage them very strongly to step in and experiment over and over again with what can work. But let's hear from someone who really knows this topic extremely well.
Well, I'm going to pick up your line there, Glenn. It's you got to experiment, and I urge everybody to take shots. The ones who scare me the most are the ones who are just laying back. I don't see that many. I did talk to a guy a while ago who was telling me that nah, it's just a trend, it's a fad, it'll pass. Like, okay,
Really? Okay.
you're worrying me. That's alarming. It's not. You got to get your head out of the sand and realize this is not a fad, and you got to start conducting experiments, exactly as you said, Glenn. So you have to, and a lot of CEOs that vexes companies. Like, oh my God, but where's the ROI? And am I what money? What am I going to get back exactly from this small investment I'm making in this experiment for AI? The answer could be nothing, zero from a P&L perspective, but the learning benefit for the organization, right? And also like the symbolic power of teaching your people, no, 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 we're going to take shots. We're
I
not going to
mean,
be nervous old ladies and lay back and just watch everybody else. So the mindsets precede methods always. So I agree with you vigorously that you have to have the mindset to experiment. I think from there, and we see this a lot now, so don't let all of the hype overtake you. So I'm excited about AI, and then I find myself frequently telling people, okay, settle down. It's software. It's still software on a
right.
screen, right? So don't lose that discipline that you had around what's the problem? Like my co-founder Vivek loves to, what problem are you trying to solve? Stop talking about the model this and the model that and the data pipeline. Put the problem first. And if you have clarity on what is a problem that you need to solve, put that first. And then right after that, ask what pieces of that could be automated or augmented or accelerated through AI. And there you want to have some technical thought partners. We do this kind of work with companies, not just in the build out of our own companies. We've created something called Superset AI Advisors or Lucen. It's a new entity that is just an AI mm, development thought partnering strategy vehicle for companies who are wrestling with exactly these problems. So we can come in and help you once you help you get clarity as to what the problem is. We can be um, disciplined, right? We're not going to sell you snake oil. If you have this big redonkulous dream and it sounds great on a PowerPoint slide down here on Earth, if it can't be built in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable amount of resources, then we'll tell you, right? So you have to have that kind of reality check
Right.
as to whether or not your dream is too big. Can we actually build it? Um, and then the final thing I recommend these days, Glenn, I know this sounds a little weird, but I'm telling everybody I know to read Empire of AI by Karen Howe. It is such a spectacular book
Well,
for
thank you.
people.
I'm gonna read that for sure.
I can't recommend it enough. It's so well researched. And so she was formerly with the MIT Review, Technical Review, and she drew the short stick and was dispatched to go years ago. There's this thing called OpenAI that, these Silicon Valley weirdos are doing. Like she didn't, it wasn't a cool assignment, but she went off and started researching the company. It was there for the entire ride. The reason the book is so good is first, it reads like a thriller because it tells you all of the internal machinations and zigs and zags that were going on and the divorce that led to the founding of Anthropic. And so like the inside pieces of it are really cool, but at least as important, she does a great job of just explaining the fundamentals of AI and the different schools of thought and how modern LLM and transformers took root to people who don't do this every day.
I love
So
it.
yeah, I recommend that as just a way to start wrapping your head around the possibilities.
Thank you for that. And I'm gonna also take a phrase away from you that you inserted in there that I think is very powerful. How do we automate, augment, or accelerate what we're doing. And if AI happens to be part of the solution to that, great. But let's go solve this particular problem with those three things in mind. So, Tom, we're out of time. And thank you very much. Tell the audience how they can reach you.
Easy. I'm Tom at superset.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn,
Fantastic.
Tom
Tom, thank
Chavez.
you so much for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you, Glenn. Really enjoyed this.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Scaling CEO. If you found this valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a fellow CEO who could benefit. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a quick rating as it really helps more people find the show. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. See you next time for more proven strategies to grow your business and leadership.